Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. And today we are taking a look at the New York Rangers going into the trade deadline. Now, the Rangers' record, we're going to compare this season to last season at this point in the year. We're also going to be looking at the names that the Rangers have been linked to. There's a couple teams in particular, so we'll be going over all of that today. So, let's start off with the Rangers' record right now. Now, currently, they sit first in the Metropolitan Division, which is a strong improvement from where the Rangers have been really the last 2 or 3 seasons now, where they've been rebuilding, retooling. And you look at their record last season. So, through 34 games played, 21, 16, and 6 last season. You look at the strong improvement they've had this year through 43 games. 43 games. They are now 28, 11, and 4, which leads to 60 points. And like I said, first in the Metropolitan Division, a huge, vast improvement from last season at this point. Now, with that said, the Rangers kind of look like they're going to be buyers at the deadline. And the key thing is they do have the assets. They have prospects. They have draft picks. They could do whatever they want in terms of acquiring talent at the deadline. And they could get some pretty big names. So the first one, we're going to head up to Vancouver. The first 2 bigger names we're talking about here are JT Miller and Luke Shen. Luke Shen went back to Vancouver this summer. He wanted to get some time back in Vancouver. He's been there in the past. Played pretty well his last stint there. The Rangers have seen him an awful lot on the East Coast in his time with the Flyers as well as the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there is a possibility Shen goes there, looking to add some more depth on the blue line, add some playoff experience at this point. That is the goal for the Rangers. So Luke Shen would be a nice addition. And obviously the big one we're talking about today is JT Miller. JT Miller is the one that everybody's focused on because he would be returning to the New York Rangers. He was a great Ranger, and you look at what he's done this year. He's almost a point per game. He's led the Vancouver Canucks in points in down seasons for Brock Besser and Elias Pettersson. JT Miller has kind of led the way for the Canucks, and unfortunately the Canucks, with everything that's going well for them, may still be sellers at the deadline, and it would make sense. The Rangers do have the ability to make that trade work for JT Miller, so that is definitely interesting. And this is from Rick Dhaliwal, Canucks Insider. Excuse me, guys. Okay, so Rick Dhaliwal, JT Miller, and Luke Shen's names are going to pop up a lot. The New York Rangers, the rumor yesterday from Saravelli on 650, they're after JT Miller. I was told last night the Rangers could also be interested in Luke Shen. You're going to hear a lot of stuff, a ton of stuff about those guys. So that is definitely interesting to look at in terms of the Canucks and the Rangers. Now, to follow that up, we got some reports about another very interesting player that has been on the market now. The Rangers, and this is from Jeff Merrick, the Rangers have discussed Vitaly Kravtsov as a potential trade chip for Jakob Chychrun, the Arizona Coyotes defenseman. And that's interesting because Jakob Chychrun has actually had a down season for the Flyers. He had for the Coyotes. He had a great season last season, kind of his breakout campaign, and his value in terms of what he's produced this year has definitely gone down. Now, I think the Coyotes will still get plenty for Jakob Chychrun. It's been rumored that the price tag is probably, for what they've been offered at least, is 2 former first round selection draft picks and a 2022 first round pick. And the Rangers could make that work for Jakob Chychrun. Another name we've heard from the Rangers now for a while, going to the Rangers from the Coyotes, is Phil Kessel as a middle 6 forward. So if you find a way to throw Chychrun and Kessel in a deal, maybe they could make that work. Chychrun has a couple years left on his contract at a 4.25 or something like that. Really, really good contract. That would definitely entice the Rangers. And Phil Kessel, whose contract is expiring this summer, so he's more of a rental, just an option there. And then looking up at Montreal, there are some big names up in Montreal right now. Ben Chiarot, who could go for a first-round pick. The Rangers could definitely do that if they see themselves as a good playoff team. Ben Chiarot could come in and kind of do what Luke Shen would do. He's a little bit more expensive than Luke Shen, but Ben Chiarot brings that same same sort of edge and would be a great playoff player. Remember, he was in the Stanley Cup Finals just here in 2021 with the Montreal Canadiens. So there's definitely some legitimacy to that rumor. We've also heard Artturi Lehkonen's name in the vein of the New York Rangers. Artturi Lehkonen has been pretty much described as the next Blake Coleman in this year's trade deadline. Very highly sought after, young forward, brings a little bit of chip in his game, a really, really good bottom six forward. And that's kind of what you're looking at in Artturi Lehkonen. So Montreal could definitely get a pretty nice haul for those two guys. And then Jake DeBrusk has been the other name we've heard from the Boston Bruins going to the Rangers. I don't know if the Bruins would want to trade with the Rangers necessarily for Jake DeBrusk, but that deal could definitely get done if they wanted to go that way. Jake DeBrusk, again, that middle six forward, potential to be a top six guy, maybe to play with Lafreniere, Kakko, some of those other guys on the Rangers. Jake DeBrusk would be a nice asset in that deal. He requested a trade at the end of 2021, so there's definitely a reason to believe he could be a little bit cheaper on the market compared to some of these other guys like a Miller or an Lehkonen or a Kessel for that matter. So that is the status of the Rangers in terms of who they want to acquire. Now, unfortunately, if you're going to acquire some of these guys, you're going to have to give up some assets. And the Rangers do have assets to give up in a deal. Some of the trade assets the Rangers have include goaltender Alexander Georgiev. There's been a lot of talk really now for almost 2 years about a Georgiev trade. It's never really happened. The Rangers do have goaltending in the AHL. So if they were to, say, get rid of Alex Georgiev, or at least trade him, right? He's on the final year of his deal. I don't think the Rangers necessarily will want to keep him around, but they could keep him as an own rental. Yet Georgiev could stay. I think legitimately with where the Rangers are at, if they were a seller, maybe they would go that direction. But the thing is, if Shesterkin goes down, can they rely on some of the guys in Hartford to fill that role, like Keith Kincaid or Matt Huska? And I think there is some concern that, despite how good Hartford's been this year, if Shesterkin goes down, they'd rather have Georgiev than those two other options. And would it be worth it for that second or third round pick the Rangers would get for Georgiev? I think Chris Drury would pretty easily say, we'll just keep Georgiev as our own rental. Some other guys currently playing in the AHL, Nils Lundkvist and Zach Jones. Those are both guys playing with the Hartford Wolfpack. They've spent some little times here and there in the NHL, more toward Nils Lundkvist, but those are two guys that were first and second round draft picks, so they definitely have some value there. They are former first round picks, leads right into the Chychrun conversation, and they could be nice pieces going to Vancouver to help rebuild their blue line, and their bigger body guys. I think that would be definitely interesting to look at. I think the Rangers really like Nils Lundkvist, so they're kind of developing him in the AHL, but I think truthfully they want to keep him. But then we have Zach Jones and then Braden Schneider. Braden Schneider from the WHL. He's playing there this season. He is another former first-round pick just this past draft in 2021. I think Braden Schneider's name is definitely going to be thrown around, whether Rangers fans like it or not. And this is the other one. And this one's a little bit more of a outside shot. But if Chris Drury wants to make a big splash here at the deadline, Kaapo Kakko's name could come into the conversation. He was just placed on long-term injured reserve, which means the Rangers probably won't see him active for the next at least month. We may not see him again till March, which is right around the deadline. If there is a team like the Coyotes or the Sabres that want to add some more punch to their top six, maybe a guy like Kaapo Kakko, if they're willing to flip a defenseman, a one-for-one trade, I would think would make sense for Kakko just to get him out of the Rangers environment. He's done better this season, but we haven't seen that progression the way we were hoping to see under Gerard Gallant. Alexis Lafreniere definitely seems to be the better option right now in the Rangers group. And let's be honest, they have a pretty loaded top six. So Kaapo Kakko kind of sliding down has been up there. And like I said, both Kravtsov and Kakko, very good talent that could be on the block. And like I said, Kakko's contract does expire this summer. So that's another thing that Chris Drury is going to have to consider. Do we have the money to keep him, or do they wait till the summer to make that kind of decision? Because he is a restricted free agent coming off of his entry-level contract. We also have some draft picks that the Rangers could give up as well. 3 first and second round picks. So they have their own first round pick this year, which probably looking between 16 and 25, maybe, if they get to the second round. I'm giving them a first or second round exit. And then they have 2 second-round picks this year. They have the Philadelphia Flyers second-round pick and their own second-round pick. So you start throwing in those assets. The Rangers have a lot that they could move here at the deadline and into the summer. So that is my latest on the Rangers here. I think they're going to be an interesting to keep an eye on. I think they'll be a name we are talking about a lot here up until the deadline, which is, I think, 5 or 6 weeks away at this point. So we'll see what happens. So guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.